Brands tell stories, and I've got 5 people today who are going to actually tell us some fascinating stories in a relatively short period of time. As they come out, everybody stand up. We're about 20 minutes away from your lunch. Come on, let's just say the bell whistle. Stand up, get a little bit of stretching right now so you get ready for some food. Now we're going to do a little bit of food for thought. I'd like to introduce Alexis, Emily, Lindsay, Mark, and Alex. And I've asked each of them to opine on the question about brands and innovation and technology. And I think one of the coolest titles that I've ever seen in the agency business for a long time, this gentleman used to have, Mark Ruxin, used to be the Chief Innovation Officer of McCann. It was very early. So Mark, I'll have you start and give your perspective on the topic.
Sure. So we were talking before coming out here, and just for full disclosure, so I was the Chief Innovation Officer at McCann Erickson and Universal McCann and a bunch of other IPG companies for years, and my job was to effectively bring CMOs of our biggest clients opportunities for emerging startups before they got so big that they weren't really press-worthy, interesting things to do. But I think on the topic, I left to start a software company, which is a mobile social software company called Tastemaker X. It's a music discovery platform, so you should all sign up and use it. But on the question of what brands are doing interesting things in the space, I would, as opposed to picking out specific brands, I think the question is really, what are you going to do if you're a brand in the space? And it really goes down to, are you going to seize the opportunity to do really interesting early native advertising on platforms like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or are you going to make a commitment to mobile and run mobile advertising across platforms like the Weather Channel or others? And I think the brands that are most forward-thinking have begun to move media budgets into location-based or mobile environments earlier than others. And I think for every interesting Instagram campaign a brand might do, most consumers aren't going to see those or follow those environments, no matter how creative they are. So the question is, are brands doing the right things on these platforms? And I think if you look at movie studios and trailers as one kind of area, there's a whole bunch of platforms where people are out raising their hands on their phone looking for movies, and I think that's where platforms like Fandango or Flixster should be first stops for companies like Sony Pictures or Fox Searchlight, or pick a company. So I think there are categories that are super conducive to traditional mobile advertising on platforms that are conducive, that leverage the mobility and location-based elements. But I think brands should be thinking about how they can have an impact with audiences in native environments. So again, to me, you got to make that decision. Once you've made that decision, press releases are one thing, impressions that track to conversions are others.
Great point. Alexis from Shopkick.
Sure. So I'm Alexis Rask. I run brand partnerships at Shopkick, and I could tell you about some of the marketers who we work with who are early adopters and fast movers. But similarly, my take on the topic is brands have the opportunity to invest early in technology and to move quickly, to Mark's point, for a press release, or they have the opportunity to leverage technology and leverage mobile to actually connect with their consumers in a different way, or to connect with their consumers in a different place. And I think the smartest brands try to think about how they take the old model of creating an emotional connection through the television with a user and create a similar emotional connection or a similar utility connection with a consumer through a device or through an app or through some sort of hardware or software integration. So I think the question is not, should brands do this? It's, where is it additive to the consumer and where is it additive to the brand? And I think there are a lot of marketers who are thinking about ways to make the experience better for the consumer. And when we talk about native advertising and we talk about brands becoming part of the flow of an app or part of the flow of the content, what they should really have in mind is, how do I make the experience better for the end user? And if that's the way I integrate, that's going to facilitate that same emotional connection that my 30-second spot used to.
We're giving the people a lot of food for thought at lunch. Emily from Wildfire, which is a division of Google, your perspective on the question.
Yeah, so we work in the social marketing technology space, And I would say that the consumers are actually driving innovation and technology, cascading to the brands and agencies, and then coming to technology providers like us that are, building out across the different social networks. So what we're seeing is we've definitely seen a shift in the marketplace towards users expecting to be part of advertising, marketing conversations, whether it's in-app, it's part of content, and they are expecting to chime in, give content, be part of the experience. And so brands knowing this are coming to technology providers and saying, hey, I'm imagining this experience. Let me give you an example. Puma this summer with its agency and Wildfire said, okay, we want to do this online and offline experience during the Olympics where we can get user-generated content. We want people to come to this experience in London where they get to see musicians and athletes from the Jamaican track team, which was one of the big, if you guys remember, Usain Bolt was one of the really big figures of the Olympics. So they had bloggers in Jamaica streaming content, pictures, videos, blog. They had content generators in London streaming pictures, content. They had live ping pong games. They had people, amazing bartenders spinning drinks in the air. They had DJs. They had sports musicians, and they were taking all of this, streaming it across social networks to their site where people could actually go and browse, Puma products, back to the social networks, over to YouTube. It was like this amazing cross-linking of information where they had feeds, social feeds in the yard, and you could see the content and the Instagram pictures that people were taking. So where the innovation, we're seeing it come is the brand says, well, people want to interact with us. They want to be part of the experience. They want to generate the content. Help us have a technology platform where you can actually do it, and that becomes quite complicated. It's the brand's imagination laid down in technology that actually makes it scalable. So they're doing amazing things to drive it.
Lindsay, who's working in a very interesting, all of this thing about places and marketing tool, you're literally working in a place, probably one of the world's largest shopping center environments, so I think you get to bring a very interesting perspective to this question.
Sure, yeah. So Westfield Labs is a new team that just started here in San Francisco. Westfield Group saw the huge opportunity and made a very big move of hiring a chief digital officer based here in San Francisco because we see this as the technology innovation capital of the world, and realize this is the place we need to incubate. This is the place where we want to partner and work with the best of the best in talent and in technology and help innovate and help change the retail ecosystem. Westfield's been extremely smart in realizing shopping behaviors are definitely changing. We're spending a lot more time in the shopping experience, not only in physical locations, but obviously different touch points on your different devices when you're home in the pre and post experience. And the Westfield platform, physical platform, is definitely one to brag about. I mean, we see globally 1.1 billion shopping sessions. We work with over 23,000 retailers, and that generates about 40 billion in annual retail sales. So we have that physical platform, and we're super excited to help build the digital innovations that help converge that physical and digital worlds.
Our next speaker is one, I think, the ubiquity of a brand that all of us know. It's probably across every screen. It's a part of something we've all felt with. Alex from the Weather Channel. It's something, whatever you see, TV, tablet, phone, it's a part of our lives. Your perspective on this?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the Weather Channel, hopefully everybody's heard of it, 100% cable distribution. Starting with that base, it's a very interesting place to go. This is a mobile local conference. The cable network has always been inherently local, but very, very difficult to reach. As we moved across from the TV over to weather.com and now to the mobile apps, there's been this certainly a sense that as the company that has that authenticity around being local, there's a lot more that we can do, and it's been very difficult to get brands to appreciate what they should do, I think, on that space. We brands are staffed by people just like us here. We know that we're looking at our mobile devices, or laptops even less, I guess, but those mobile devices in front of us. How do we recognize that the way that brands tell stories, the way that brands make us feel like they're compelled to buy their products, how can we do that across those devices? It's been a question of two things, I think. One is that on the mobile side, those formats that the panelists alluded to have not been right. I mean, taking that idea of the internet banner, a square box, which really had its origins in print, bringing that across the web and then making a little tiny version of it on the mobile device, it's just not the right way to do it. The time that I spent at Yahoo running mobile advertising there, we spent a lot of time with brands. The banner ads don't work. And so the question has been for this audience, for these panelists, what type of other ideas are there out there that are going to provide that connection, either to help me want to feel good about a brand, for the brand to tell me a story, to connect an emotion to a story the brand's telling, or to allow me to actually drive action. And I think, again, talking mobile local here, that's where local comes in. Brands touch consumers locally one way or the other. How do we make that connection such that a brand can make me do something, make me buy something, make me feel something at any given time?
So I think it leads into the very first question I want to ask. We're going to ask a couple of questions, and we're going to go to the audience, and I realize that we have a limited amount of time, but I know a lot of you have some pent-up questions about brands. What are some brands? Obviously, Mark, you alluded to Studio Brands, which has always been, I think, innovative when it comes to using digital technology and digital marketing. And you talked about Puma. What are some other brands that are doing things beyond getting their toes in the water in this social, local, mobile? What are some brands that are really stepping up, embracing in a consumer perspective, and any particular brands that are surfacing that all of you know? I do expect the people in Los Angeles always to be innovative. But outside of that, what categories, what brands are surfacing?
Well, I think I'd surprise everyone by saying, and it's very specific to Shopkick's model because we're a mobile application for shopping and loyalty. We see a lot of what's going on in the consumer packaged goods space, and it's fairly public record, so I'll say this. P&G actually has someone who sits here in Silicon Valley, very similar to the way Lindsay and her team work at Westfield Labs. And so a big consumer packaged goods brand in Cincinnati has team and presence here in Silicon Valley who spend some time with Shopkick and with lots of other players in the mobile and location and social space because they know how critical mobile is, how critical social is, how critical technology will be to the way they communicate with consumers going forward. So there's umpteen examples of different P&G brands doing different things with different technologies. There's some stuff in our app that you could see right now. You'd see a lot of P&G brands. But I think the fact that they moved a senior marketing executive out to the Valley to spend time and be that sort of beachhead back to Cincinnati is very cool.
There's about 10 plus labs out here, like you have InBev, Walmart, P&G, some other brands. Ford, I believe, has opened up a lab here. I think there's several brands that have done this. Any other brands that have surfaced?
Sure. I mean, I think for us, inherently there are certain categories of advertisers that just are local. So one for us is insurance. Particularly across the US, we see, hail the size of golf balls that I've never experienced before I visited Atlanta. But when this stuff is coming down, insurance companies recognize how critical it is that they can reach those consumers with a certain message depending on conditions. I think perhaps I'm preempting a future question, but one thing we've talked about forever is data. And I don't think that marketers have truly got the value that they're going to find out of data yet. Location is just one form of data. I think it's when this group of technologists here starts to overlay location with some of the other signals, and particularly some of the measurement aspects of data, that can really start to drive that performance for brands. And that's some of the things we can talk about we're doing in the other company here, and some of them we can't, but that aspect of driving performance by looking full cycle, looking at what, for us, of course, weather conditions, what weather conditions drive certain performance. And this isn't just rain driving sales of umbrellas. This is data that we have by looking at retail transaction logs and saying, hey, we've recognized that when it rains for 3 days and then it's clear for 2, actually that drives up retailer sales. So for particular brands, that's a great piece of information. They know they can apply that based on a zip code map, based on a local map, based on a mobile forecast, and really understand how they can see a sales lift with that type of full cycle measurement. Now, as we go through the weather company and we're analyzing retail data from a number of these different categories, we're finding out these different insights about how we can drive sales by looking at data. And it's definitely location, it's definitely the pieces that are unique to us, but my question would be, what is it unique to each of you people out here? What types of data do you have that you can overlay with both local, with measurement, and find out insights that can drive those brands' performance?
Warren?
Just to weigh in, I mean, I think a lot of the brands that probably won't be alluded to are the brands that have created the platform. So, companies like Yelp have become synonymous with, advertising local businesses through, opt-in, location-based, signals that they're picking up. And I think if you look at LinkedIn and you look at Yelp and you look at Internet Movie Database, all these big technology brands, those are actually the brands that have built themselves based on, user-based intuition and the experiences that they're watching people have in real time. I do think the second best category of brands to embrace local and social, frankly, are the technology brands that live in this ecosystem. So, say what you will about Microsoft's products, they've been aggressive advertisers across all of their products in mobile and social from the very beginning. Some of the biggest spenders, some of the most innovative thinkers. So, Microsoft and HP, and it's not surprising they're in this ecosystem. They're building products to create these other businesses on top of them. So, I would say, those guys have been early, and they'll continue to be aggressive in this space.
Emily, any other brands that you can sort of share besides Puma that?
Yeah, I know some that we see when we think of driving out new functionality, and I know this goes beyond Wildfire into Google. There's a couple of brands that stand out. Cirque du Soleil was on board quite early into branding on mobile platforms. Red Bull always is doing innovative stuff. They're always interested in hearing what we're doing and being a part of it at the very, very beginning. I think one thing that's difficult to what you said about data is that you can have your social data, you can have your mobile data, you know what's going on over on display, video, it's disparate, and I think some of the innovation will be stilted. You can sort of overlay something from here with here, but until you can kind of unify and look at things across digital and social data feeds into the rest of everything you're doing online and offline, and those insights are packaged in a way where you can see them more easily. The innovation it's going to be stilted. You're going to find a couple of very aggressive forward brands that spend a lot of money in pulling insights and patching things together, but it's not, I don't think the best insights are scalable right now.
In prep for today's meeting, I talked to a couple of CMOs. I talked to a top CMO in the top 15 Fortune 500, and one of the questions, I shared who the panel was, and one of the questions that he asked me, and which I told him I'm going to ask you, he wanted to know, everyone's talking about native and talking about social and local and mobile. He wanted to know what the new black was going to be for 2013. Is it going to be data? What do y'all think? Because brands are all questioning. They're all talking about what is the next best thing. He wants to know what is the new black for 2013 is from your perspective. Who wants to take a stab? Mark, I'll come to you first because I know you definitely have some opinions on this.
Well, I think for the past 5 years, we've watched the broad social networks get too big, quite frankly, to be specific enough to be helpful. So I think the verticalization of some of these social mobile environments, I'd be looking towards, the verticalization in music and sports and film, because I think to try to surface insights into, particular psychographics across Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr right now, it's too big. The fire hose is too large. Picking up individual signals is too hard because anyone's personal, even if it's a brand, they're not publishing vertical messages, so you get these kind of fragmented fire hoses. So I'd look at big platforms starting to emerge, and Pinterest is probably the first biggest one. I mean, really, that's a platform that showcases 3 different kinds of products. It's food, it's home furnishings, and it's clothing. So, but it doesn't extend to everything. I think you'll start to see platforms, vertical social networking platforms that are better able to, target to geography and, psychographics in a better way.
Very good point. Anybody else want to take a stab at the question? Yes.
I think mobile's connection to retail will be one of the real sort of, there's the buzzwords, there's native, there's data, there's what will be most talked about, but I think mobile's connection to retail is something that can't be ignored because every marketer we've mentioned either owns the space in which something is sold, processes the transaction through which the items are sold, or actually manufactured the product. And the fact that we are all walking around browsing content passively and consuming things that will impact what we think about the next time we spend money or travel or shop, and then we have that same device with us in the store or at the restaurant or anywhere else where a transaction takes place. That's where the marketers have to focus, is being part of that ecosystem around talking to the user through their path to purchase and fundamentally changing how they map the path to purchase through a mobile device.
I encourage everyone to download Shopkick if you haven't. It's a phenomenal product. Alex, you had a question here surface from someone, from a comment you made.
Yeah, I had a question. You mentioned that banner ads don't work. But if I'm hearing some of the comments correctly, things about if we have data, so we can personalize banner ads, and they're now in a convenient spot for us, why wouldn't they work?
So it's not that they don't work altogether. I guess I usually don't work figuratively here. They are not as effective as they could be by a long way. I'll give you just one example, which is that I once saw a panel with the editor of Vogue, and she said it really is a challenge to the digital advertising group that was assembled. Nobody ever complains about the ads in my magazine, but the only thing they complain about on the website is the ads, right? Why is that? It's many of the same advertisers, but instead of having these beautiful aspirational images, which were part of the experience of reading the magazine, I had this strange box with maybe something gaudy and flashing, or it was detracting from the experience itself. And I think if we look at the deployment of banner advertising in most of the applications, our own applications included, it detracts from the experience of using the app. It doesn't match the look and feel, it doesn't feel native. And I think that's really, when you interpret this buzzword of native advertising, it means a lot of different things to people. If it's done right, and I've yet to see it done perfectly, honestly, there's some opportunity here for people to solve for that one. If it's done right, I think native advertising can be very, very successful. But there is a place for both sides of that. Native advertising is likely to be more direct response focused. Brand advertising has to be image-based. You have to be able to make a connection and make you feel something. And so it's very hard for a piece of text to make you feel something in the same way. So that's really what I would say is the difference on the banner advertising piece.
Mr. Evans might want to have a panel different on that last conversation. That in itself could spark hours of commentary on creative. Lindsay, as you see the other companies opening up labs, brands opening up labs, do you see yourself partnering more with them? I'm intrigued that United has opened a place doing something very interesting, and they're encouraging everybody through their app and through their email to come and spend time down at Westfield. Is that the portent of something we're going to start seeing a lot more?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here, right? Is because we want to have the opportunity to have our neighbors be some of the best and smartest in the business. And then a lot of the retailers are here. I mean, with a retail lens, you look at the Nordstrom's labs and the Sephora labs, and there's a number of retailers really starting to innovate in this market. I encourage you all to go into a Sephora and see what they've done with the iPad and the experience in their stores. That's definitely where we're looking to have bigger, deeper partnerships. And of course, they are our customers. So how do you partner with them in an unbiased way and help get the shopper to connect with them more too?
Another CMO that I talked with of a beverage company said to me that it isn't about innovation. It's about brands need to invent themselves. It's the next few years are all about invention. Perspective, because invention is radically different than innovating. His perspective was that innovation was very band-aidish. Alex?
Just to reiterate the point, the banner advertising piece, if you focus on what's in the box, which I guess you might say is the innovation in that piece, you're missing this wider question of how is the advertising integrated? As a product organization, you want to ask the question why, how are you driving the objectives of the marketer, and why have you decided to put it in this little box? How can you better integrate it on the page in a way that's going to scale? I guess the question, just linking it back to the question of the new black, there's so many things within the new black, whether it's data, whether it's native advertising, whatever it is. What I've yet to see is any really good examples of people executing good campaigns on mobile. We still continue to run lots of really awful mobile creatives. They have no call to action, yet the marketer's looking for a click, for example. Or, they're just poor execution, poor use of data, incorrect measurement pieces. These are all the basics of marketing, but because people are focusing on fitting in the box, on taking something from the web and translating it to mobile, they're not getting something which really works.
I don't think any of us would disagree. Anybody, any last question? Anybody, I'm missing, we have a question back there.
I'm curious about whether, in the context of on-premises mobile applications in the hands of consumers, anything specific has worked, especially in the mall context, in the ShopKit context. Is there something that has excited consumers yet, and you've seen that? Can you describe that?
Sure. So the model of ShopKick from the eyes of the consumer is everyone loves loyalty programs. If we had time, I would ask everyone to raise their hands. You know, if you were in 1, 10, 20 different loyalty programs, the average U.S. household is enrolled in 18 of them. Loyalty works incredibly well for travel because you can conceivably stay at just one hotel chain and try to fly primarily one airline. But loyalty in the shopping space is a little bit tougher because between grocery stores and apparel and pharmacies and the whole bit, you probably shop at around 20 to 30 different stores on a fairly regular basis. So ShopKick tried to build a phone-based application rather than a little plastic card that you had to swipe in the store to aggregate a lot of your different shopping behaviors into one space. And so we've got this sort of mix in our app of fun and fortune, where the consumer earns some fortune by collecting the loyalty points when they walk into different retail locations and when they physically pick up and engage with different products from manufacturers. But we also just made the experience sort of fun and informative, and we are seeing, you know, tens of millions to hundreds of millions of pieces of content viewed where people are researching what's available in the stores they're going to go to, what different products have launched into market. And I think that just speaks to, we've given you something that surprises and delights you when you're there, and we've sort of tapped into a mindset that the consumer gets something out of the whole experience. And so the retailers who have our hardware installed and the brands who run native campaigns with us end up seeing great results because they're facilitating something that adds value for the user.
Can I just share one quick example as well and say the same thing? In store, I saw an awesome example. So it was, I think it was either a Brazilian or Argentinian company. It was a sneaker store. And what they did was inside their own, so they knew that people were going into other retailers and doing comparison shopping. So they were showrooming, they were going and looking at the prices on there. What they did then was when they detected that you were in a competitor's store, using their own app to check prices, they popped up a timer on the screen, 100 seconds for 100% discount. If you could get to the store, from the competitor's store to their store, within 100 seconds, you got whatever percentage was left in discount. And they've got videos from the shopping mall showing people, when they figure out what this is, leaping down escalators, like climbing, you know, sliding down over the sides, sprinting. I think one guy managed to get something like 82% off. He managed to get from the competitor's store to theirs in, I don't know, 8 seconds or something, 12 seconds. It was incredible. So I mean, yours is fun. That was a lot of fun.
That's more fun.
It seems like both of you guys just alluded to something without dropping the buzzword, but I think to the new black, and maybe it's not new, but I think eventually marketers and platform companies will solve the gamification issue, because really, you know, and if you look at Twitter and Facebook, those are gamified platforms. The game is to build more followers so you can have a bigger influence, and whether you're Clout doing a different number on that, whether you're, ShopKick and you're trying to encourage people to, earn something, that's really the goal. And I think the better brands are at creating some realistic, engaged opportunity, and I think gamifying corporate microsites might not be the way to do it. But I think, quite honestly, if you have an audience like, kind of Apple enthusiasts or something like that, they haven't even tried, and eventually they might get to the place where they have to actually create consumer loyalty, and, games really are the most engaging way to do it, but just applying that word to old platforms I don't think will work, but someone will get it.
Great points. I think I'm going to end on the fortune, and what was the other F you used?
Well, I said fun and fortune, and by
Fun and
fun I
fortune.
meant game mechanics.
So let's add the third one, that's food. It's time for lunch. Please join me and give this panel a big round of applause. Thank you very much.